Hey folks, this is Rhykker with the Diablo 4 Season 9 class tier list. If you're wondering what class to play this season, this video should help you out. Now, every class can do all the content in the game, including T4. You might need the right builds, and might need to follow the right build guides, and maxroll.gg has all the build guides that you need. And ever since last season, pushing high into the pits isn't as needed in order to level up your glyphs, because now you only need to do a pit level 50 minimum to be able to max your glyphs at 100. So that said, we're going to go over what I feel are the best classes this season with respect to giving you as many options as possible to tackle all the content of the game on highest difficulty. These are best guesses based on the test server, based on the patch notes after the test server. But that said, we always see surprises emerge in the first couple of weeks post-launch. So stay tuned for updates on what the top 10 builds are going to be. So we're going to put up here the previous season tier list, and we're going to explain quickly my criteria. I'm judging how well a class can perform in the following 4 categories, and I weigh these differently. So the most important is going to be how good the class is at speed farming. The second is how well it can push in pits. The third is how good it is at taking on lair bosses. And then lastly, and least importantly, the 1 to 60 leveling experience. How quick and easy can it be? So an S tier class is one that excels in all of those categories. This tier list isn't about which class has the best build, which class is going to push the furthest in the pit. It's about which class has a wide variety of builds that excel in all of those factors. As we talk about every class, we will highlight specific builds and try to call out which we think will be the best builds of the season. So you've had a chance to look at the previous season's tier list. We're now going to move into the Season 9 tier list, starting at F tier. Yeah, oof. And quite the fall from grace from S tier last season. We have the Barbarian. Now, Season 9 sees a lot of nerfs. We saw some buffs as well in the latest patch notes right before season launch. But the biggest thing that's being gutted is Overpower. Now, all the best performing builds in Season 8 were based on Overpower. Overpower isn't fully dead. Debatable, but all the builds that relied on Overpower took a serious hit. Barb just took a number of nerfs altogether, and we're seeing its power drop across the board. So remember our 4 criteria? Barbarian does not perform excellently in any of them. The best Barbarian builds this season are looking to be Bash, and maybe Lunging Strike might come out on top. But barring some upset where Rob the Barb God finds some undocumented change, some bug or something that brings the Barbarian back to its glory, it is dead in the water for Season 9. I've never gone into a season with such low expectations for a class. If I were to play a Barbarian, I would start with Whirlwind to level. It's a decent build to level with. It's decent at endgame. It's mediocre at endgame, but then I would use that to farm up either a Bash or a Lunging Strike, whichever gear I get first. Bash and Lunging Strike builds are roughly equal in all aspects of the endgame. Alright, that takes us past the D tier, no one in the D tier. That takes us past the C tier, no one in the C tier. That's how far behind everyone else the Barbarian is. We get to the B tier, where we got the Druid. I had Druid in B tier last season. He's staying in B tier. He's nice and comfortable. Druid is not bad. B tier is not bad. But let's explain why he's in B tier. Now, Cataclysm was the star last season for the Druid. Cataclysm's been taken down a peg. It's still going to be the best speed farming build for the Druid, however. For taking down bosses, you actually have some excellent options. Druids are really good here. You can go with a Boulder Druid. You can go with a Companion Druid. There was a bug. There was a bug that was discovered that was preventing Companion Druids from actually performing as well as they should be performing. That's been fixed, so they ought to be a lot better now. And there's also a Flesh Render build, so lots of options there for Druid for bossing. But then for pushing pit, Druid isn't going to be the best. Its best options are going to be, again, Flesh Render, Companion, and also enter Pulverize. Now, Pulverize has actually seen quite a rise via a new unique item that makes it drop poison puddles on the floor. So Pulverize altogether, it won't be the best build of the season, but it is a very, very, very good build. And if I were to go with a Druid in Season 9, I would level with Pulverize, and then just transition into the endgame Pulverize, and then use that to farm up a Cataclysm for speed farming, and then either a Boulder, a Flesh Render, or a Companion for bossing. But honestly, if you just want to stick with Pulverize, it's not that bad either. Now, it's also possible that Pulverize is being underestimated. The changes might make it even better. So again, stick around for the top 10. We want to keep an eye on whether Pulverize actually rises all the way to being an S tier build. Now, joining our Druid in B tier, we have, dropping down from S tier, the Necromancer. Necromancer was another big casualty of the Overpower nerf. Bloodwave was the star for Necro in Season 8, and it's been a few seasons now, but it's taken quite a hit. Still going to be an excellent build, though. For bossing, for endgame in the pit, it's still basically the Necromancer's only option right now. But for speed farming, it's not going to be nearly as fast. In general, Necros on the speedrunning front are not going to be able to keep up with other classes now. Don't get me wrong, Bloodwave is still good. It's still one of the best speedrunning builds you can do on a Necro, but you also have, Blood Surge might be just as good for that overworld T4 content where you don't need all that extra damage, and Blight even becomes an option here. In fact, a build to keep an eye on is the Shadow Blight. It's a damage over time build that's may emerge. It might be something, again, it may be a surprise that'll be performing better than expected. Necromancer, however, remains an excellent leveling class. If I were to go Necro, I would level with Blood Surge, then I would transition into endgame Blood Surge and use that to farm up Bloodwave, and then just use Bloodwave for everything in the endgame. That takes us into the A tier, where the Rogue remains. Now, Rogue's best build was Death Trap by far. It has taken a hit. It was nerfed pretty much directly, so it's not going to be as strong as it was in Season 8, unfortunately. That means in endgame, it's not going to push as far. In fact, Rogue doesn't have any build that's going to perform, that's going to push really deep. When we're looking at the builds that are topping the pit leaderboards, the unofficial pit leaderboards, right? People track, I did a pit 106, I did a pit 112, etc., etc. I don't foresee the Rogue ranking high up there in Season 9. That said, I believe Death Trap will remain one of the Rogue's, not just one of it, it'll remain the Rogue's best all-rounder build for endgame. It's still an excellent build for bossing and for speed farming. The Rogue in general has a couple of excellent options. Twisting Blades is back into S tier for bossing, Rain of Arrows as well, and for speed farming, Shadow Step is still an S tier build. Then for leveling, Dance of Knives just outclasses any other Rogue build. I tried to stick with, I don't remember if it was Twisting Blades or something else to level, and then I leveled another Rogue with Dance of Knives, and it's a night and day difference. Dance of Knives is just so good for 1 to 60. So if I were to go Rogue in Season 9, I would start with Dance of Knives, and then I would transition to Death Trap as soon as possible once I got to endgame. Now, joining the Rogue in A tier, and probably going to be the second best class of the season, rising up from C tier, we have the Sorcerer. Sorcerer's getting so much love this patch. If you want to play a Sorcerer, this is a great season to do so. I very well may play, I'm probably going to play more than one class, so I'm probably going to play a Sorcerer. The debate is whether I start Sorcerer or I start, spoiler, Spiritborn at this point. But the Rogue and the Sorcerer are in a similar position where neither of them are going to push super far in the pit. But outside of that, the Sorcerer is basically just an even more versatile Rogue at this point, in that it has an even greater variety of builds that are excelling in every other category of the game. Whether you're bossing, speed farming, leveling, you have multiple excellent builds. The big standouts though, if you were to pick just like one build to stick with for all activities, Hydra and Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning's an old classic, but Hydra is probably going to be the most popular build of the season, just because it got so much love. You can now have your giant Hydra heads with the new uniques that enable that. But Chain Lightning, again, also excellent, right up there. So when I do go Sorcerer, I am likely going to go Hydra from the start to the end. But, if you've never done Chain Lightning, that's also something you can do. You can start and end with Chain Lightning if you just want to stick with one build. But if you want to then branch out, Ice Shards is great. Meteor is great. For speed farming, you can go Blizzard, Inferno, Fireball, Ice Shards, Ball Lightning, Lightning Sphere. But again, Hydra and Chain Lightning are going to be the most versatile builds that will excel at literally everything. Again, except they're going to fall a little bit behind in pit pushing. But they're still the best a Sorcerer can do. Alright, that takes us to the S tier, and at this point you know who's there. And Spiritborn has been gutter tier since its introduction. It was introduced into the game as S tier, then they kneecapped it for a couple of seasons, and now Spiritborn is back in force. I believe by far Spiritborn is looking to be the strongest class of the season. No matter what you want to do in the game, the Spiritborn has multiple builds that excel. But if there's two builds in particular that I want to call out for the end game, they're both builds based on... They're both Thorns builds in effect, but they're different flavors of the Thorns build. We got a Rake build and we've got a Quill Volley build, but they're both based on this new unique Balazan's Max Telatl. What does this item do? Gives you a bunch of Thorns, gives you ranks to Bastion. What does Bastion do? It gives you Thorns and gives you Barrier while you have Thorns, and it makes each of your attacks damage close enemies for a percentage of your Thorns damage and deals 100% of this damage as poisoning over 3 seconds. And each time you've retaliated with Thorns for 5 seconds, the poisoning damage is increased by 100% up to 300. And again, both these builds revolve around maximizing the output of this mechanic. Now, the Rake version is more forgiving, easier to play, but if you really want to try hard, Quill Volley is going to be able to push further. You'll be able to get more out of if you are executing correctly. Positioning becomes much more important, and managing your cooldowns is trickier. Outside of that, though, the builds are exceptionally similar, but the Spiritborn still has other great builds as well. And the Spiritborn has a number of excellent leveling builds: Evade, Quill Volley, Stinger. When I make a Spiritborn, I'll likely go with Quill Volley to level. In endgame, I'll transition into Quill Volley, which is still a very good endgame build, if not, the best in all aspects as the Balazan's builds are. But I'll use that to then farm up my Balazan's gear. So that about wraps up our tier list, folks. But I turn the question to you: which class do you think will be best and worst in Season 9? What build are you planning to run? Sound off in the comments. And again, stay tuned for a top 10 list that will likely go out next week as we get to test the performance of the new builds. But also stay tuned for an Ultimate Season Guide on Season 9, which will be going live later this week as we test out all the new stuff, and we can instruct you on how to get the most out of Season 9. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.